Hello, anatomy students. We're going to pick up where we left off with the male reproductive system PowerPoint. So this is part 2. We're going to talk about accessory glands and semen. And before we move on, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this picture because I think that it's a really interesting one. This large pink circle, this is the urinary bladder, and we are looking at the posterior aspect of it. These tubes that are here are the ureters. These are connecting the kidneys to the urinary bladder. So as the kidneys filter the blood, anything that they take out of the blood is collected into tubes, and it all travels down these ureters and fills up the urinary bladder. So the stuff that the kidneys are taking out of the blood, that is urine. So the other structures that we're looking at in the back of the urinary bladder, at the posterior aspect of the urinary bladder, include the ampulla, these swollen ends of the vas deferens. We have our seminal vesicles here, and you can see here that part of the seminal vesicle has been like cut away, just kind of sectioned, so that you could see what it looks like on the inside. Here in this area, you have the converging of the two ampullae. You have the two ducts from the seminal vesicles, and they are converging to merge with the prostatic urethra, which is this portion here. This gland here is the prostate gland, and part of it has been cut away so that you could see what it looks like on the inside, and you can clearly see that the urethra runs right through the center of it. And then inferior to the prostate gland and near the base of the penis, we have these two small glands, which are called the bulbo-urethral glands. They were formerly called the Cowper's glands, if that's a term that perhaps maybe you recognize a little bit more. And you can see that they're tiny little ducts here empty right into the urethra. Okay, let's go. So the accessory glands are going to produce secretions. They function to activate sperm in order to make them ready to swim and to fertilize an egg. It's going to provide nutrients in order to support sperm motility, in order to make sure that they can swim, move. They are also going to move their contents through tubes via a process called peristalsis, which is kind of like a squeezing motion that happens down the tube, kind of like squeezing the toothpaste tube so that you can get the very last bit of toothpaste out from the very bottom of the tube. And then they're also going to add some buffers, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The glands that we're talking about are the seminal glands, the prostate gland, and the bulbo-urethral gland. All right, so let's start with our seminal vesicles. As I mentioned before, they're located on the posterior aspect of the urinary bladder. They're going to merge here with the ampulla, and the duct of the seminal vesicles that merges with that ampulla, that's called the ejaculatory duct. And so the secretions of the seminal vesicles are going to empty into the prostatic urethra. And this is just a micrograph of what the tissue of the seminal vesicles look like. You can see that the spaces here, the lumens, are small, and that we have a lot of folding. So that means that there are lots of cells inside of the seminal vesicles that are producing the majority of the contents of semen. All right, so next we have the prostate gland. The prostate gland is found at the base of the urinary bladder. It surrounds the urethra as it leaves the urinary bladder. And the prostate gland actually consists of multiple smaller glands. They are surrounded by smooth muscle and connective tissue, and it's this smooth muscle that is going to perform peristalsis in order to squeeze and push the secretions that are produced by all of these tiny little glands in the prostate gland into the urethra itself. So you may have heard about male prostate problems. Largely, these are brought to light when a patient has problems urinating, and that should make sense. If we look at a cross section now of the prostate, you can see here, this is the urinary bladder, and the urethra runs right through the center of that prostate. And if the prostate becomes inflamed, it can pinch off and close off, or even sometimes just narrow that urethra. And that's going to cause urinary problems for the patient itself. Like maybe urination could become painful, or maybe instead of the urine coming out in a steady stream, it's going to come out maybe as a dribble, but then the patient still has urine in the bladder, and so there's still that urgency to go, but they can't. So it can become a very uncomfortable situation. So that's how the prostate is going to affect urination, especially when it's inflamed. The last gland to talk about is the bulbo-urethral gland. These are mucous glands, so they're going to secrete mucus or add mucus into the semen, and those ducts are going to release that mucus into the urethra. And that's happening in the spongy urethra. So these glands are found at the base of the penis, and these glands are going to empty into the spongy urethra. It's this portion here, like in between these little layers of smooth muscles, this tiny portion here, that's called the membranous urethra. And then this is a cross section of the glands that are inside of that bulbo-urethral gland. All right, so semen also contains sperm, but we're going to talk about spermatogenesis a little bit later on, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that, yeah, there's sperm in there, and that's coming from the ampullae of the vas deferens. So remember that the ampullae can store sperm there as well, and then it just kind of gets mixed in with the secretions of the three glands that we just talked about. So this pie chart is showing us what semen is made up of. And as you can see, the majority of semen is made by the seminal vesicles. The secretions from the seminal vesicles include fructose in order to nourish the sperm. That's a sugar, prostaglandins, fibrinogen, and the fluid is alkaline. It's got a higher pH, and that is going to protect the sperm when they enter the female reproductive tract. The female reproductive tract has a low pH. It's very acidic, and so that would kill the sperm. And so they need to be surrounded by more alkaline fluid so that they can safely make their journey through the female reproductive tract and up into the fallopian tube in order to perform fertilization. Prostatic fluid, or fluid that is secreted by the prostate, secretes two enzymes, acid phosphatase and also amylase, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The bulbo-urethral gland is going to secrete alkaline mucus, and so again, that's alkaline, that's a basic solution. It's going to protect the sperm in that acidic environment of the female reproductive tract. And then cells called nurse cells, which are found in the seminiferous tubules, as well as the epididymis, are also going to contribute secretions to the semen in order to help support those sperm on their journey. So the enzymes that I was talking about are listed here. An enzyme called protease is going to dissolve mucus in the vagina, because mucus in the vagina is going to impair the sperm from making their way through the vagina and up through the uterus and into those fallopian tubes. So they have to dissolve away that mucus. Another enzyme called seminal plasmin has antibiotic properties in order to prevent the sperm from being damaged by infection. And it's also going to help prevent, kind of clear out infection in the male urinary tract. So when ejaculation occurs and the semen runs through the urethra, that urethra is going to be kind of like cleaned out by this enzyme of infection, so that the semen doesn't pick up infection as it runs through the urethra and then enters the female reproductive tract. Next, we have prostatic enzyme, and this is an important one because it's going to convert a protein fibrinogen into fibrin. And when that happens, the semen is going to coagulate inside of the female reproductive tract. So it's going to turn into like a gel. And you're probably like, well, why does that have to happen? Well, in order to prevent the sperm from flowing backwards and from backtracking and escaping the female reproductive tract. So once the semen goes into the female reproductive tract, it kind of forms its own plug in order to ensure that the sperm are always swimming forward, keep on swimming. And then the fibrinolysin is another enzyme that is going to work after about 10 or 15 minutes of the semen being inside of the female reproductive tract. We don't want that plug to stay there forever, so the fibrinolysin is going to liquefy that plug after about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, so in our, I think we can talk about this now. Let's talk about the different portions of the penis. We've got three main areas. The root is going to attach to the body wall itself, and that consists of a portion that is lying behind our pelvis called the bulb. We also have a portion here called the left crus and the right crus. And so these are, again, the portions that are attaching the root of the penis to the body wall. Notice that these are situated inferior to the symphysis pubis. The second portion of the penis is called the body. And then the very end of the penis has the swollen portion, which is called the glands penis, and that's got the opening for the spongy urethra at the very tip. The part that is going to attach the glands penis to the body is known as the neck. And so there are layers of tissue that cover the internal portions of the penis. The skin layers are the same as that of the scrotum, and even the penis itself is covered by the smooth muscle known as the dartos. So make sure that you go back to part 1 if you haven't done that first, so that you know what all of those do. And then we also have a sheath of connective tissue that's largely made up of collagen, called the collagenous sheath, that kind of binds all of these internal structures together. So what we're looking at in this picture is a cross section of the penis itself. Okay, I've got to move myself over. And so we've got 2 superior portions and then 1 inferior portion. The corpus spongiosum is a layer of tissue that surrounds the spongy urethra. And then the corpus spongiosum is going to expand at the tip of the penis to form the glands penis. And then the corpus cavernosa, these are the portions of the penis that are going to stiffen. You can see in the center that you have these arteries that are here. When these arteries dilate and fill with blood, then that is going to cause an erection, and it causes the penis itself to stiffen. And that's going to allow for ejaculation during sexual intercourse. All right, I'll talk about sperm production in part 3. Thanks very much for listening. And remember, if you wanted to go back and review these slides, I've posted them to Canvas. I've also posted a list of focus questions for you to answer, just to ensure that you are picking up on the important portions of this presentation. All right, thanks for watching. There's just one more left.